Let's move on to a team that could take an offensive lineman early in the draft, and that would be the Carolina Panthers. They're in a strange spot at number 8. They've traded for Sam Darnold, so the need for quarterback isn't as urgent as it was, but they still could take a quarterback depending upon how the board goes, or they could take the best available player. That's what Matt Rule, the head coach, suggested when they traded for Sam Darnold a couple of weeks ago. Or they could trade back. Today, Scott Fitterer, new GM of the Carolina Panthers, meeting with the media, discussing the possibility of doing just that, sliding out of the 8th spot in round 1.
We've talked to several actually already. I'd say at least 5, all in different parts of the draft, and there'll be a lot more calls this week. And we're very open to moving back. We're open to picking. It just depends on how the board falls. Those first 7 picks in front of us.
And that really is the key. And what teams do, they talk to a bunch of other teams about potential moves, and they're contingent on who's available. We heard from Dave Gettleman earlier in the week, the Giants GM, on that topic where, he's got this reputation, reality, he never trades down. Well, there have been times where we were ready to trade down, but the guy that the team wanted to trade up for was gone. That's part of it. And once you get that many picks in, the board starts to take on a life of its own, and you never know who is going to be there. So a lot of options for the Carolina Panthers, and at some point next Thursday night, they're going to have to make a decision. You can have all the options in the world, but you better be ready when the time comes to make a decision because you got 10 minutes to do it.
Right, and that's why teams have clusters of guys, basically, that they say, all right, if we're picking here, then this is who we think we can pick. If we're picking here, this is who we think that we can pick. And if none of those guys are there, then yeah, we're going to probably explore every avenue that we can in order to trade down. Now, I think that because the Panthers now have Sam Darnold, if somebody like Trey Lance happens to fall into their lap, Justin Fields maybe falls into their lap at number 8 overall, then yeah, I think that has to be a serious consideration, especially because, look, Sam Darnold, as much as you can say there's a lot of potential there, he also was, by the numbers, one of the worst starting quarterbacks in football last year. We can maybe say that was Adam Gase. Maybe it wasn't. We don't quite know. So, and that's one of the things about Sam Darnold that I think sometimes people forget. I know we're not necessarily talking about Sam Darnold right now, but when he was at USC, and I remember this very well because I was in Los Angeles at the time, it's not like he was playing turnover-free football, okay? So this guy has had turnover problems going all the way back to college. So can you solve that? That's something that the Panthers have to figure out. And that's why I think that if there's a quarterback there, then yeah, you're definitely going to consider him if that's the guy that you think properly fits your offense. Otherwise, you definitely could select somebody like a Rashawn Slater if he's still available. If Sewell isn't picked by Cincinnati, as I think most of us expect will happen, he could definitely be somebody that the Panthers pick up. They're going to have a lot of options there, Mike, and I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. I don't think anybody is. I don't think they are, but they're going to have a lot of options, and it'll be interesting to see how they figure it out.
On Darnold, because another thing Fitterer said, they'll decide after the draft what to do about his 5th-year option, $18.858 million. It's funny. We see reports, and we accept them as gospel truth, and sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. For example, the report that the Chiefs aren't going to sign Orlando Brown to a long-term contract. Well, maybe they will, right? Until they don't, there's a chance they will. And with Darnold, there were reports after that trade was done that the Panthers will exercise the 5th-year option. Fitterer said, we'll make that decision after the draft. And, hey, Myles, they could flip Sam Darnold. I mean, that wouldn't be out of the question, would it?
No.
I mean, they could. They've given up 3 picks for him, 2 next year, a 2 and a 4 next year, and a 6 this year. There could be something that happens between now and May 3rd when they have the deadline of picking up the option where they could trade him, depending upon what happens in the draft. So if they get a quarterback, maybe they will move on from Sam Darnold. We just don't know. And even if they would pick up the option, that doesn't preclude trading him. I think they will pick up the option if they don't trade him before May 3rd. I don't know why you wouldn't. They invested $33 million in Teddy Bridgewater. They'll invest $23 million or so in Sam Darnold. They've already invested 3 draft picks in Sam Darnold, but if Justin Fields or Trey Lance fall into their laps and they want him, David Tepper, the owner of the team, is so determined to get a franchise quarterback, he's willing to treat these moves as sunk costs if need be in the quest for a guy who's going to be his quarterback for the next 15 years.
Yeah, and that's one of these weird things where, Mike, I think you're totally right. If something happens and the quarterback that the Panthers thought that they were not going to be able to get falls into their lap instead of going at, 1, 2, 3, or 4 in that first round, I guess we really should say 3 or 4 because we know who the first couple of quarterbacks are going to be off of the board basically at this point. Look, then anything can happen. And yeah, when you have somebody like Sam Darnold, you could in theory move him and you would probably, get pennies back on the dollar that you spent in order to acquire him. But I think that at the same time, if there's something that, strikes you that could be a good deal for you, yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't. It's still in the realm of possibility. And so what Fitterer was saying today, in that we have a strong plan and we'll let you know what that plan is after the draft. But right now we are concentrating on the draft. I think it sort of does invite that kind of speculation to say, well, maybe if something happens, that doesn't necessarily mean it's likely to happen, but if something happens, then there's going to be a consequence of that something happening.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.